When I was kicked out for being pregnant, I left without saying a word. 10 years later, I returned as the owner of $1 million app. My mother fainted when she saw my name in the paper. My name is Melissa Anderson, and I'm 34 years old. I'm sitting here staring at the front page of the Boston Globe where my face appears next to the headline, Former Outcast Transforms Prenatal Care App into $75 million Empire. 3 hours ago, I received a call from my cousin Jenna. Mel, your mother fainted when she saw the newspaper. They called you a tech genius who overcame family abandonment. Everyone's calling. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I simply hung up the phone, sat in my corner office overlooking the Boston skyline, and thought about how exactly 10 years ago, I was kicked out of my home with nothing but a suitcase and a positive pregnancy test. You have 24 hours to leave this house, were the last words I heard from my mother. I didn't beg. I didn't shed a tear in front of her. I just nodded, went upstairs, packed my bags, and left without saying a word. Today, I'm not just telling my story. I'm sharing a lesson about building something from nothing when the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally turn their backs on you. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt rejected by the people who should have protected you. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. I was always the misfit daughter in the Anderson family. While my sister Rebecca excelled as the perfect girl, homecoming queen, Yale graduate with honors, married to a doctor by 24, I was the sister who questioned everything, from religion to the gender expectations my conservative parents imposed. My father, a respected cardiac surgeon, and my mother, president of the PTA and local charity league, maintained a flawless image in our upper-class community in Newton, Massachusetts. For them, appearances were everything. Rebecca followed the script perfectly, chose medicine as her career, married the son of family friends, settled in a mansion just 15 minutes from my parents' house. I, on the other hand, dropped out of law school in my second year to work at a tech startup. It's just a phase, my mother would say at social gatherings. She'll go back to school when she gets tired of this computer game. I remember the Christmas party of 2013 when my father raised a toast to our Rebecca, who just got accepted into Harvard's neurosurgery residency program. Applause, champagne, extravagant gifts. When it was my turn to share news, I mentioned that my startup had secured its first significant funding. That's nice, dear, my mother responded, quickly changing the subject to the new car they had bought for Rebecca. Throughout my life, I accepted my position as second choice, always in the shadow of my perfect sister. Despite the unequal treatment, I still desperately tried to win my parents' approval. I attended every family event, offered to help with my mother's community projects, even accompanied my father to his golf games despite hating the sport. When Rebecca had her first child, I spent weeks helping with the baby, preparing meals, cleaning her house, while my mother just showed up to take pictures for Instagram. Good to see you making yourself useful, she commented. Maybe this will inspire you to start your own family the right way, with a husband first. In fact, I did have a relationship. Lucas was a programmer, and we worked together at the startup. He was brilliant, kind, and loved me for who I was. I introduced him to my family just once, during a disastrous dinner where my father barely spoke to him, and my mother made indirect comments about men with real jobs. Lucas left devastated, and I never invited him to family events again. Still, I kept trying. When my parents celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary, I organized and paid for a lavish surprise party that consumed 3 months of my salary. I invited all their friends, planned every detail. At the end of the night, my mother hugged Rebecca and said, "Sweetie, you always know exactly how to make us happy." Rebecca hadn't even helped with the preparations. I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled. Living in the shadow of perfection was suffocating, but I kept pushing forward. Every morning, I'd wake up and check the family group chat. Messages from my mother about Rebecca's latest achievement, invitations to events where I'd inevitably be compared to my sister. I showed up anyway, smiling through the pain, accepting the backhanded compliments. "At least you're doing something with those computer skills," my father would say, as if running a promising tech startup was a hobby, not a career. The startup was my escape. Between lines of code and investor meetings, I found my voice. Our app helped small businesses track inventory efficiently. Nothing revolutionary, but solid. Lucas and I were more than colleagues by then. Late nights debugging turned into dinner dates, and soon we were inseparable. "You're brilliant, Mel," he'd tell me when I solved a particularly challenging problem. "Your parents have no idea what they're missing." I believed him sometimes, but years of conditioning are hard to break. For my 24th birthday, my parents gifted Rebecca a spa weekend for all her hard work with the children. I received a gift card to a department store with a note suggesting I buy some professional clothes for when you decide to get a real job. I tucked the card into my wallet and thanked them politely. That night, Lucas took me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant. "I have something for you," he said, sliding a small box across the table. My heart skipped. Was this it? The proposal that might finally make me acceptable in my parents' eyes? Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small computer chip charm. "Because you're changing the world, one line of code at a time," he explained. I wore it everywhere. It became my talisman, a reminder that someone valued my mind, my work, my true self. 2 weeks later, everything fell apart. Our main investor pulled out unexpectedly. The startup was hemorrhaging money. Lucas and I were working 18-hour days trying to save it, snapping at each other from stress and exhaustion. "Maybe we should take a break," he suggested one night, after a particularly heated argument about our coding architecture. "Just until things stabilize." I agreed, too tired to fight. What was one more rejection? Anyway, the next morning, I woke up feeling strange. My period was 2 weeks late, but I'd attributed it to stress. Now, a new possibility dawned on me. The pregnancy test took 3 minutes to develop. 3 minutes that stretched into eternity. When the 2 pink lines appeared, clear and undeniable, I sat on the bathroom floor for hours, my mind racing through scenarios, none of them good. Lucas and I were on a break. The startup was failing. My apartment lease was ending in 2 months. And my family? My family would see this as the ultimate confirmation of my failure. For one shameful moment, I considered not telling anyone, just handling it quietly, alone. Then I thought about the child growing inside me. My child. Would I pass down the same conditional love I'd grown up with? No. This baby deserved better. I deserved better. I spent the weekend researching options, calculating finances, making plans. By Sunday evening, I had a decision. I would have this baby, with or without Lucas, with or without my family's support. But first, I needed to tell them. I chose Sunday evening, knowing my parents would be home after church. I drove the familiar route to Newton, rehearsing what I'd say. I wasn't asking for money or a place to stay, just support, understanding, the bare minimum a daughter should expect from her parents. I was naive. My mother opened the door, surprise flickering across her perfectly made-up face. "Melissa, we weren't expecting you. Rebecca and the family just left. Of course they'd had a family dinner without me." I swallowed the hurt, adding it to the mountain I'd accumulated over the years. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Your father's watching the game, but come in. Do you want some leftover pie? Rebecca made it. It's divine." I followed her into the immaculate kitchen, declining the pie. My stomach was already in knots. "Mom, I need to tell you and Dad something important," she sighed, glancing at her watch. "Is this about the startup? I told you those tech things are unpredictable. You should have stayed in law school. It's not about the startup. It's personal. Can you get Dad, please?" Something in my tone must have registered, because she didn't argue. Minutes later, we sat in the formal living room, the room reserved for important guests and serious conversations. "Well?" my father asked, clearly annoyed at missing his game. "What's so urgent?" I took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed my announcement was deafening. My mother's face froze in a mask of horror, while my father's complexion darkened to a dangerous shade of red. "You're what?" he finally growled, his voice low and controlled. "I'm pregnant, about 6 weeks along." My hands were trembling, but I kept them folded tightly in my lap. "And the father?" My mother's voice was brittle, like thin ice about to crack. "Lucas, we're taking a break right now. The startup isn't doing well." My father stood abruptly, looming over me. $250,000. That's how much your law school education cost before you dropped out. And now this? The specific amount hit me like a slap. He'd never mentioned the cost before. But of course he'd been keeping track, tallying my failures. "I didn't come here asking for money," I said quietly. "I just thought you should know." My mother finally unfroze. "Know what exactly? That you've been irresponsible? That you're throwing away what's left of your future? That you're bringing shame to this family?" I'd expected disappointment, maybe even anger, but the venom in her voice shocked me. "I'm keeping the baby," I stated, my resolve strengthening in the face of their reaction. "I've made my decision." "No," my father declared flatly. "No daughter of mine is going to be an unwed mother. What would people say? What would our friends at church think? I don't care what they think. This is my life, my body, my choice." My mother laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Your choice? You've made nothing but poor choices. Dropping out of school, that ridiculous startup, and now this?" "The startup isn't ridiculous," I defended automatically. We've helped hundreds of small businesses. And where's all that success now? My father countered. Can you support a child on a failing business? Do you have any idea what children cost? I'll figure it out. I didn't come here for a lecture or for money. I thought maybe you'd want to be grandparents to this baby. My mother stood now too, both of them towering over me. Rebecca has given us 3 perfect grandchildren. Children born in wedlock, to parents who can provide for them properly. That's what family means. The unfairness of it all washed over me. 3 decades of never measuring up, of conditional love, of being the family disappointment. So what are you saying? I asked, already knowing the answer. My father looked at my mother, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then he turned to me, his expression hardened. You have 2 options, Melissa. You can fix this situation discreetly. We know doctors who can help. His meaning was unmistakable. Or what? My voice was barely a whisper now. Or you can leave this house and this family, my mother finished. We won't support this decision. We won't witness you destroying your life and embarrassing this family. I stared at them, these strangers who had raised me. You'd disown your own daughter? Your own grandchild? You're disowning yourself with these choices. My father replied coldly. You have 24 hours to decide. Either way, I want you out of this house by tomorrow night. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. Something hardened inside me at that moment. A seed of determination taking root. I don't need 24 hours, I said, rising to my feet. I've made my choice. I walked past them, up the familiar stairs to my old bedroom, preserved like a museum exhibit of the dutiful daughter I'd never truly been. I didn't own much here anymore, just some old clothes and mementos. It took less than an hour to pack what mattered. When I came downstairs with my small suitcase, they were waiting by the door. My mother held out an envelope. Take it, she said tersely. It's enough to take care of things, if you change your mind. I didn't take the envelope. I looked into their eyes one last time, searching for any flicker of love, any sign that they might relent. There was nothing. Goodbye, I said simply, and walked out into the cool spring evening, the door closing firmly behind me. In my car, I finally allowed the tears to come. Not for long, just a brief release of pressure. Then I wiped my eyes, started the engine, and drove away from the only home I'd ever known. I didn't know it then, but I was driving toward a future brighter than anything I could have imagined. Have you ever had a moment when you realized the people who should love you the most actually love you the least? Drop a heart in the comments if you've had to walk away from toxic family dynamics. I drove aimlessly for almost an hour, too shocked to form a coherent plan. Eventually, I found myself parked outside a small coffee shop, one of those independent places with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. The kind of place where you could sit for hours with a single cup of tea. My hands shook as I dialed the number of the one person I thought might understand. Aunt Claire? My voice cracked. I need help. Claire was my mother's younger sister and the family black sheep. Single by choice, owner of a small bookstore, frequent traveler. My mother considered her a failure, but to me she was fascinating. I'll be on the next flight, was all she said after I explained what happened. That night, in my tiny apartment, I finally broke down completely. Claire held me while I sobbed, years of pent-up pain pouring out all at once. You know, Mel, she said while making tea in my minuscule kitchen, some families are toxic. Some people confuse control with love. You haven't done anything wrong by creating your own life or by being pregnant. But what now? I'm unemployed, pregnant, alone. Claire took my hands. First, you're not alone. Second, you have a brilliant mind they never appreciated. And third, she smiled, I have a spare apartment in Seattle. Come with me. Start over. Seattle? But my life here... What life, Mel? The one you built trying to please people who'll never accept you as you are? The truth in her words hit me like lightning. But what if I fail? What if you soar? She countered. That night, I made my decision. I wouldn't respond to my parents' ultimatum. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't explain. I would simply leave. The following weeks passed in a blur. Claire returned with me to Boston to help pack up my apartment. I sold almost everything, keeping only essentials. My parents never called once. Rebecca sent a single text. Mom is devastated. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. I contacted Lucas to inform him about the pregnancy. He seemed frightened, then resigned. I'm not ready to be a father, Mel. I'm sorry. He offered to pay for an abortion. When I explained I was keeping the baby, he signed parental rights waiver documents without hesitation. I considered seeking child support, but decided I preferred to raise my child completely on my own terms, without complicated connections to someone who clearly didn't want to be part of our lives. As for the startup, it closed its doors permanently a month after I left Boston. The inventory management app we'd worked so hard on became just another failed tech venture, our code and dreams lost in the digital graveyard. I learned this through a former colleague who emailed to check if I was okay after my sudden departure. I didn't reply. In Seattle, Claire's apartment was small, but welcoming, with a view of Puget Sound. "It's temporary," she explained, "just until you find your way." Besides hosting me, Claire offered me a fair-paying job at the bookstore, allowing me to save for my future plans. During those first months, as my belly grew, I fell into a routine of helping at her bookstore during the day and staying up late researching on my laptop. The idea for the app came naturally. As a single pregnant woman, I discovered existing resources for expectant mothers assumed a traditional family structure. Where were the apps for women like me? I started coding at night, building a prototype for a pregnancy app that offered not just medical tracking, but resources for single mothers, local community options, and legal advice for establishing parental rights and child support. When Sophia was born on a rainy November morning, I had a working prototype and a business plan. I held my daughter in my arms and promised her, "We're going to build something important together, something that will help other women like us." Claire took a photo of us in that moment. Years later, that photo would become part of the origin story of Birthright, my app that revolutionized prenatal care. But at that moment, we were just an exhausted mother, a newborn baby, and an idea that might change everything. If you've ever had to completely reinvent yourself, type "new beginning" in the comments. I want to know if you too found your strength in your darkest moments. The first 2 years were the hardest. I worked at the bookstore during the day, cared for Sophia at night, and developed the app in the hours I could steal between diapers and feedings. Aunt Claire was my guardian angel, watching Sophia when I needed a few uninterrupted hours to code. 6 months after Sophia's birth, I secured a spot in a Seattle startup accelerator focused on women entrepreneurs. My pitch about Birthright, now a beta app with 500 local users, impressed investors enough to secure initial funding of $150,000. It was the first moment I felt that maybe, just maybe, everything would work out. With the funding, I hired 2 programmers to help refine the app. I couldn't have built Birthright alone. The technical challenges were too complex for one sleep-deprived new mother. My background gave me enough knowledge to create the initial prototype, but these experienced developers helped transform my vision into a robust platform. One of them, Maya, became particularly invested in the project, as her sister had recently become a single mother. I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment near Claire's bookstore. I established a routine that allowed me to be both mother and CEO, waking at 5 a.m. to work before Sophia stirred, taking her to daycare 3 times a week, working frantically until pickup time, then spending our evenings together. Our big break came when a major business magazine put us on their startups to watch list, leading to an exponential increase in users and investor interest. Within months, our app had grown from a few thousand to tens of thousands of users. At no point did I attempt to contact my family. In the beginning, I obsessively checked my phone, hoping for a message, a call, any sign they missed me. Eventually, that habit faded. Through Claire, I received occasional updates. Rebecca had 2 more children. My parents renovated the house. Life continued without me. On Sophia's 3rd birthday, I made a decision. I would no longer be defined by my family's rejection. From now on, I would look only forward. That night, after putting Sophia to bed, I sat in my small makeshift office and wrote a letter to my parents. It wasn't a letter of reconciliation or anger. It was a letter of farewell to people I would never again allow to hurt me. I never sent it, but the act of writing it was liberating. The next day, I pitched Birthright to a group of San Francisco venture capitalists. I walked out with a $2 million investment and the determination to turn my small startup into something extraordinary. As Birthright grew, so did my confidence. I hired a diverse team of women who understood our mission, many of them single mothers themselves. We expanded the app's features based on real user feedback, adding telemedicine options, virtual support groups, and even a financial planning module specifically designed for single-parent households. By Sophia's 5th birthday, we had offices in Seattle and San Francisco, over 50 employees, and more than 500,000 active users across the country. I bought our first real home, a 3-bedroom house with a small garden where Sophia could play. It wasn't a mansion in Newton, but it was ours, paid for with my success. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious. Between raising Sophia and running Birthright, there wasn't much time for relationships. Besides, I'd learned to be cautious with my heart. Sophia was thriving, a bright, curious child who loved books and puzzles. She had Claire's adventurous spirit, and people said, my determination. When she asked about her father, I told her the truth in age-appropriate ways. When she asked about my parents, I simply said they lived far away and weren't able to be part of our lives. Are they mean people? She asked once, her 5-year-old logic cutting straight to the point. No, sweetie, I replied after careful consideration. They just have very strict ideas about how people should live their lives. And I chose a different path. I like our path, she declared, hugging me fiercely. Me too, baby. Me too. One ordinary Tuesday, everything changed again. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when my assistant knocked. There's a call for you. Someone named Rebecca Anderson. She says she's your sister. 7 years of silence. And now this. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the phone. Mel? Her voice was exactly as I remembered. It's been a long time. Yes, I replied, unsure what else to say. I saw an article about you in Business Insider. Your app. It's impressive. Really impressive. Thank you. An awkward pause followed. Then she said, Mom and Dad saw it too. My heart raced. And? They want to see you and meet Sophia. Another pause. We all do. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. The Christmas parties where I was invisible. The anniversary dinner where my efforts went unacknowledged. The night they gave me 24 hours to leave. Why now, Rebecca? Is it because I'm successful? Because the article mentioned a recent funding round of $30 million? That's not fair, she protested. They're getting older. They've had time to think. People can change, Mel. Can they? I wondered. Or do they just adapt their tactics when their old ones stop working? I need time to think about this, I finally said. And I need to consider what's best for Sophia. Of course, Rebecca replied. Just don't wait too long. Life is short, Mel. After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring out at the Seattle skyline. Was I ready to let them back into my life? More importantly, was I ready to let them into Sophia's? 3 weeks passed before I responded to Rebecca's call. 3 weeks of internal debates, sleepless nights, and long conversations with Claire. They don't deserve your forgiveness, Claire said over wine one evening after Sophia was asleep. Maybe it's not about what they deserve, I replied. Maybe it's about what I need, what Sophia might need. And what's that? I swirled the wine in my glass, watching the burgundy liquid catch the light. Closure, maybe, or setting a different example for Sophia about dealing with difficult people. Just be careful, Mel. Leopards rarely change their spots. I called Rebecca on a Sunday evening, when I knew my parents would likely be home. I'm willing to consider a visit, I told her, but I have conditions. Sophia comes first. Any sign of rejection or judgment toward her and we're gone. No second chances. That's fair, Rebecca agreed quickly. When can you come? As fate would have it, I was scheduled to speak at a major tech conference in Boston in 2 months. Early June, I said. We'll stay at a hotel, not at the house. Mom and Dad won't like that, Rebecca warned. That's non-negotiable. This isn't a family reunion, Rebecca. It's a carefully controlled experiment. The weeks leading up to the trip were a whirlwind. Birthright secured another major investment, bringing our valuation to $75 million. We launched in 2 additional countries. I hired a COO to handle daily operations, giving me more flexibility for the future. Through it all, I prepared Sophia carefully for the meeting. At 9 years old, she was perceptive and curious about the grandparents she'd never met. Why haven't they wanted to meet me before? She asked one night as I tucked her in. The question broke my heart. How do you explain conditional love to a child who's only known acceptance? Sometimes adults make mistakes, sweetheart. Big mistakes that take a long time to fix. Your grandparents made a mistake with me when you were in my tummy, but now they want to try again. Will they like me? The vulnerability in her voice made my chest ache. Everyone who meets you loves you, Sophia. But even if they aren't perfect, I want you to know that's never your fault. Understand? She nodded, absorbing my words with wisdom beyond her years. The day before our flight to Boston, I received a call from an unknown number. Melissa? It's Dr. Shapiro. I was your pediatrician when you were a child. Surprised, I responded, Dr. Shapiro, how did you get my number? Your mother gave it to me. Apparently, she got it from your assistant when she was organizing your visit. I made a mental note to have a serious conversation with my team about privacy protocols. She's organizing a welcome dinner for you and Sophia, at the church. I froze. At the church? What dinner? The welcome reception, to celebrate your return to the family. Your mother invited the entire congregation. Everyone's so excited to meet your daughter. The tone in his voice when he said daughter told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a reconciliation. It was a spectacle. A chance to show how generous they were in accepting back the prodigal daughter and her illegitimate child. Dr. Shapiro, I never consented to this. I knew nothing about any reception. Oh, he seemed genuinely surprised. Your mother implied it was all arranged, said you had finally come to your senses. After hanging up, I immediately called my mother. A church reception? Seriously, Mom. I thought you'd be pleased. She responded defensively. I'm showing everyone we're accepting you back. Accepting me back? Like I'm the one who did something wrong? And exposing Sophia to a circus where everyone will look at her like some kind of curiosity? You're overreacting as always. It's just a dinner to celebrate the family reuniting. No, it's you trying to control the narrative, turning our story into something that makes you look like the forgiving mother, not the one who threw out her pregnant daughter. So you're not coming? Her voice took on that familiar tone of calculated disappointment. I took a deep breath. We're coming to Boston as planned. We'll meet you, Dad, and Rebecca for a private lunch. No church, no community, no spectacle, just family. If that's not acceptable, then we won't see each other. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I'll cancel the reception, she finally said, her voice cold. But your father will be very disappointed. He'll survive, I replied. Just like I did. What do you think will happen when Melissa finally faces her parents after all these years? Share your predictions in the comments. The tech conference was a success. I presented Birthright's new telemedicine feature to a packed room, and the feedback was extraordinary. Several tech publications requested interviews, including the Boston Globe. The following day, we met my family for our agreed-upon lunch. It was surreal seeing my parents again after 7 years. My father looked older, his hair completely gray. My mother was the same, perfectly groomed, controlled smile. Rebecca seemed nervous, fidgeting with her napkin. Sophia, dressed in her favorite blue dress, clutched my hand tightly. So, my father said after initial greetings, we hear your app is doing well. Birthright, I corrected. Yes, we're valued at $75 million now. We just closed our Series B. He nodded, clearly impressed despite himself. And this must be Sophia, my mother said, looking at my daughter with an expression hard to read. She looks like you when you were small. Nice to meet you, Sophia said politely, exactly as we had practiced. The conversation proceeded tensely. Surface questions, cautious answers. No one directly mentioned the past until my mother said, "We're so happy you finally decided to let us back into your life, Melissa. These years have been difficult for all of us." I set my fork down. Let's be clear about something. I didn't keep you out. You threw me out when I was most vulnerable. You never tried to find me. You never asked about your granddaughter. You only reached out when you learned about my success. That's not fair, my father interrupted. You knew where to find us. Yes, in the same house you kicked me out of. The place where you told me my pregnancy was an unacceptable shame to the family. Rebecca intervened. Can we leave the past behind? For the children's sake? My kids should know their cousin. I looked at Sophia, who was watching the conversation with attentive eyes. I'd love for Sophia to know her cousins, but I won't pretend nothing happened. If we're going to rebuild any kind of relationship, it needs to be based on truth. What truth do you want, Melissa? My mother asked, visibly irritated. That you got pregnant out of wedlock? That you abandoned your education? That you ran away instead of facing your responsibilities? Catherine, my father warned, nervously glancing at nearby tables. I took a deep breath. The truth is that you conditioned your love, and the truth is that I don't need it anymore. I came here today to give Sophia a chance to know her extended family, but I see that was a mistake. I began gathering my purse, ready to leave, when my father spoke. Wait, please. Surprisingly, his eyes were moist. I'm proud of what you've built, he said, his voice low. And I'm sorry, truly sorry. We reacted badly. I reacted badly. My mother looked shocked at his admission. Thank you, I replied, not knowing what else to say. Can we try again? He asked. No expectations, no judgments, just getting to know our granddaughter? I looked at Sophia, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Maybe, I answered, but on our terms, not yours. The Boston Globe article was published the next morning. From outcast to revolutionary, how Melissa Anderson transformed personal trauma into a $75 million tech empire. The article detailed my journey, from being thrown out of my home while pregnant to creating Birthright, now used by over 2 million women in 6 countries. The reporter had done his homework, discovering the connection to the prominent Anderson family of Newton. Sources reveal that the entrepreneur was rejected by her conservative family when she became pregnant out of wedlock at 24, building her tech empire without any family or financial support. When my cousin called to tell me about my mother fainting at seeing the newspaper, I felt no joy or vindication, just a strange sense of closure. 3 years after that tense lunch, things were different. We weren't a perfectly reconciled family like in the movies. The wounds were too deep for that. But there was a new equilibrium. Sophia, now 12, visited her grandparents occasionally, always with my supervision. My father had made a genuine effort to know her, taking her to the park and reading stories. He also finally transferred that fund he had mentioned, turning it into an education savings account for Sophia. My mother tried, in her limited way. Rebecca and I exchanged messages regularly, and her children adored their tech cousin, who knew everything about computers. Birthright continued to grow. We recently launched a scholarship program for single mothers seeking education in technology. The first class of 50 women would start next semester. Sophia loved visiting the office and helping the design team. Aunt Claire moved to San Francisco to be closer to us, running a new branch of her bookstore. She remained my rock, my chosen family. As for Lucas, Sophia's biological father, he never reached out again, an absence that, ironically, gave us freedom to forge our own path. Sophia sometimes asked about him, and I was honest. Within what's appropriate for her age, perhaps one day she'll want to meet him. If that time comes, I'll support her decision. Sometimes people ask if I've forgiven my parents. It's a complicated question. I no longer carry anger or resentment. That would be like carrying a heavy stone that only hurts myself. But I haven't forgotten either. The scars remain, reminders of the lessons I've learned. That family is more about actions than blood. That rejection can be the most powerful redirection in life. That our worth never depends on others' approval. That sometimes we need to lose everything to discover our true strength. If you're watching this and going through your own moment of rejection or crisis, remember, your story doesn't end at the hardest chapter. What seems like your ending might just be the beginning of something extraordinary. I'm Melissa Anderson. I was kicked out for being pregnant. I left without saying a word. And 10 years later, I returned not just as a survivor, but as the creator of something that's helping millions of women write their own redemption stories. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well and on your own terms. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and transformation. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. 6 months after the Boston Globe article, my phone rang with an unexpected call. It was my father. "Melissa, I'd like to visit you and Sophia in San Francisco. Just me. No mother, no Rebecca. Just a grandfather wanting to know his granddaughter better." I hesitated, caught off guard by the request. After our cautious lunch in Boston, we'd maintained minimal contact, holiday calls, occasional photos sent through Rebecca. Nothing substantial. "What does Mom think about this?" A pause. "She doesn't know I'm calling. Things have been strained since the article. Since I apologized to you." Interesting. I never imagined my father breaking ranks with my mother. In 34 years, I'd never seen it happen. "Why now, Dad?" His voice softened in a way I'd rarely heard. "I'm 68 years old, Melissa. I've spent my life defining success by appearances, by what others think. The heart surgeon with the perfect family, the community leader, the success story." He took a breath. "And where has it gotten me? A daughter who rightfully wants nothing to do with me. A granddaughter I barely know. A marriage that's more performance than partnership." I remained silent, letting his words sink in. "The article, seeing everything written out like that, what we did to you, how you succeeded despite us, not because of us. It forced me to face some hard truths. I thought of Sophia, now playing in the garden of our San Francisco home. She deserved to know her grandfather. The real man, not the perfectionist surgeon who'd rejected her mother. "You can visit for a weekend," I finally said. "But we're not erasing the past, Dad. And if this is some attempt to bring me back into the fold on Mom's terms—" "It's not," he interrupted. "I promise you that." 2 weeks later, my father arrived. He seemed smaller somehow, less imposing than the towering figure of my childhood. He brought Sophia a telescope, for a girl who's already reaching for the stars. And me, surprisingly, a flash drive. "What's this?" I asked that evening after Sophia had gone to bed. "Every photo I could find of you growing up. School plays, science fairs, birthdays. I thought Sophia might want to see her mother as a child." He hesitated. "And I thought you might want proof that you weren't always invisible to me." I plugged it into my laptop, and there I was, gangly and serious at my 8th grade science fair, where I'd built a functioning solar panel. My father stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder, pride evident in his expression. "I don't remember you being there," I said quietly. "I left work early. Your mother said it wasn't necessary, that it was just a science fair, but I wanted to see what you'd built." Another photo showed me at 16, receiving a coding award. Again, my father in the background. "You were always extraordinary, Melissa. I just didn't know how to nurture it. How to nurture you." "Why not?" The question that had haunted me for decades. He stared into his whiskey glass. $4,300. "What?" "That's what my father had in his bank account when he died. $4,300 after 45 years working in a factory. He was brilliant, could fix anything, build anything, but he never had opportunities. When I got into medical school, he took a second job to help pay for it. I'd never heard this story before. I promised myself my children would never worry about money or status, that they'd have every advantage. Somewhere along the way, that turned into rigid expectations, into measuring success by external validation. He looked up at me, into valuing Rebecca's predictable achievements over your innovative spirit. And Mom? Your mother came from money but not respect. Her family had wealth but no standing. Marrying a doctor gave her the social position she craved. She spent her life terrified of losing it. It didn't excuse what they'd done, but it helped me understand the complex machinery that had shaped my childhood. The weekend passed quickly. My father and Sophia connected over her collection of minerals and his knowledge of geological formations. I watched them from a distance. This new version of my father, patient, attentive, genuinely interested. On his last evening, as Sophia showed him her latest coding project on her kid-friendly laptop, he turned to me with tears in his eyes. She's extraordinary, just like her mother. Yes, she is, I agreed. I've made a decision, he said later, after Sophia went to bed. I'm retiring from surgery. I've given the hospital my 6-month notice. Because of your hand tremor? I'd noticed it throughout his visit. He looked surprised. You saw that? I see everything now, Dad. He nodded. Partly the tremor, partly, I want different things now. Time, not prestige. Connection, not approval. And Mom? We'll see. For the first time in 40 years, I'm making choices without considering her reaction first. It's liberating. When he left the next day, Sophia hugged him tightly. Will you come back, Grandpa? As often as your mother allows, he replied. Looking at me, I nodded. We'll work something out. As his taxi pulled away, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but a softening. A recognition that people can change, even after decades of rigidity. That night, I received a text from my father. Thank you for giving me a second chance I don't deserve. I'm proud of you, Melissa. I always have been, even when I couldn't show it. I showed the message to Claire during our weekly video call. Do you believe him? She asked. I believe he wants to change. Whether he can sustain it, especially against my mother's influence, that's another question. And what about Catherine? Any thawing there? I shook my head. Radio silence. According to Rebecca, she's still furious about the article, about Dad's apology, about everything. Are you okay with that? I thought about it, really thought about it. Yes. I've spent my life seeking her approval. I'm done with that now. If she wants a relationship with me and Sophia, she knows what needs to change. Look at you, Claire smiled. All grown up and setting boundaries. I laughed. Only took 34 years and a $75 million company. Better late than never, kiddo. 3 months after my father's visit, Birthright reached a major milestone. 5 million active users worldwide. We celebrated with champagne in the office and ice cream with Sophia at home. That same week, I received a formal-looking envelope from Boston. Thick cream paper, my parents' embossed return address. Inside was an invitation to Rebecca's 40th birthday celebration, a gala event at the Newton Country Club. Black tie, 3 weeks away. A handwritten note from Rebecca was tucked inside. It wouldn't be complete without you and Sophia. Please come. Mom promises to behave. I traced the embossed lettering with my fingertip, memories flooding back of countless society events where I'd felt like an imposter in my own family. The thought of returning to that world made my stomach clench. I called my father, now a more regular presence in our lives through weekly video chats with Sophia. Did you know about this gala? Yes, he admitted. It was your mother's idea, but Rebecca genuinely wants you there. Is it a setup? Mom's chance to parade the prodigal daughter in front of her friends? He sighed. Probably a bit of that, yes. But it's also Rebecca's milestone birthday, and she's been making real efforts, Mel. That was true. Unlike our mother, Rebecca had shown genuine remorse for her role in the family dynamics. She'd sent thoughtful gifts to Sophia, made efforts to introduce her children to their cousin via video calls, forwarded family medical information I might need. I'll think about it, I told him. That night, I discussed it with Sophia. Would I get to meet my cousins in person? She asked, eyes brightening. Through video calls, she'd developed a particular bond with Rebecca's middle child, Emma, who shared her love of science. Yes, and your Aunt Rebecca and grandmother too. What about the mean things Grandma said about me before I was born? I'd been honest with Sophia about our family history in age-appropriate ways. She knew her grandparents had initially rejected her existence, though not the harshest details. People sometimes say mean things when they're scared or angry, I explained. Grandma was very worried about what other people would think. That was more important to her than being kind. That's silly, Sophia declared with 12-year-old certainty. Yes, it is. Very silly. I think we should go, she decided. I want to meet Emma, and I want to wear a fancy dress. I smiled at her simple reasoning. We'll see. After putting Sophia to bed, I called Claire for her perspective. You've been keeping them at arm's length on your terms, she pointed out. Maybe it's time to see if you can exist in their world on your terms. What if nothing's changed? What if it's just another opportunity for them to make me feel inadequate? Then you leave, Claire said simply. You're not that powerless girl anymore, Mel. You're a successful CEO, a mother, a woman who built an empire from nothing. You can handle a country club gala. 2 days later, I RSVP'd yes for myself and Sophia. I booked first-class tickets to Boston and reserved a suite at the Four Seasons. Not to impress anyone, but because I deserved comfort. And Sophia deserved a treat. The night of the gala arrived crisp and clear. Sophia twirled in her midnight blue dress with tiny silver stars embroidered on the skirt. Like the night sky, Mommy, while I opted for a sleek black column dress that projected simple elegance. No flashy jewelry, no designer labels on display. Just quiet confidence. As our car approached the country club, I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. The same anxiety I'd experienced at countless family events where I never quite measured up. You okay, Mommy? Sophia asked, noticing my expression. I squeezed her hand. Just a little nervous. Sometimes when I'm with Grandma and her friends, I feel like I'm still a little girl. Sophia looked at me seriously. But you're not. You're my mommy. And you make the best app in the world. I laughed, tension breaking. Well, when you put it that way. The country club hadn't changed. Same manicured lawns, same colonial architecture, same understated wealth. As we walked in, heads turned. I heard whispers. That's Catherine's other daughter. The tech one. Did you read that article? Rebecca rushed over immediately, enveloping me in a hug that felt surprisingly genuine. You came. I wasn't sure you would. Happy birthday, I said, handing her a small gift box containing a vintage brooch I'd found in a San Francisco antique shop, one that reminded me of something our grandmother had worn. And this must be Sophia. Rebecca knelt down. I'm your Aunt Rebecca. I'm so happy to finally meet you in person. Sophia, suddenly shy, managed a quiet happy birthday, before spotting her cousins across the room and perking up. Is that Emma? Rebecca smiled. Yes. She's been talking about meeting you all week. Want to go say hi? As Sophia ran off to meet her cousins, I braced myself for the inevitable encounter with my mother. I didn't have to wait long. Melissa. She air-kissed both my cheeks, keeping physical contact to a minimum. That dress is simple, but it suits you. 7 words, 2 backhanded compliments. Some things never change. Mother, you look well? She did. Expertly colored hair, designer dress, not a wrinkle in sight despite being in her mid-60s. I wasn't sure you'd come. You've been so independent these past years. Rebecca asked. I've always had time for people who genuinely want me in their lives. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, everyone's been asking about you. The Boston Globe article made quite a splash in our circle. And there it was. The real reason for my invitation. Not reconciliation, but damage control. A chance to show her friends that the family rift had been mended, that she had magnanimously welcomed back her wayward daughter. I'm sure it did, I replied coolly. If you'll excuse me, I should check on Sophia. As I turned to walk away, she caught my arm. We're seated at the head table, of course. You and Sophia will be joining us. I gently removed her hand. Of course. The evening proceeded like a carefully choreographed dance. I made polite conversation with old family friends, answered questions about birthright, watched Sophia play with her cousins. My father, surprisingly, stayed by my side for much of the night, running interference when conversations became too probing or judgmental. During dinner, my mother tapped her glass for attention. We're so blessed to celebrate Rebecca's birthday with family and dear friends. Especially blessed to have our daughter Melissa and granddaughter Sophia joining us from California. Some of you know that Melissa has become quite successful with her technology company. The pause before technology company spoke volumes. We always knew she would find her way eventually, she continued with a tight smile. Family is everything to us Andersons, no matter what. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. I felt all eyes on me, waiting for my response. The old Melissa would have smiled politely, accepting the rewriting of history, the erasure of pain. But I wasn't that Melissa anymore. I raised my own glass. To Rebecca on her birthday, and to family, both the ones we're born into and the ones we choose. To second chances when they're earned. And to truth, without which love is just performance. A murmur rippled through the table. My mother's smile froze. My father reached under the table and squeezed my hand. Rebecca, ever the peacemaker, quickly steered the conversation to safer topics. But something had shifted. I'd claimed my narrative, refusing to let it be sanitized for public consumption. Later, as Sophia played with her cousins during dessert, my mother cornered me on the terrace. "That was unnecessary," she hissed. "This is Rebecca's night." "Which is why I didn't tell the full story," I replied evenly. "About being thrown out, about the years of silence, about you only reaching out when you saw my success in the press. You're determined to paint us as villains." "No, Mother. I'm determined to live in truth. If that makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you should examine why." She smoothed her already perfect hair, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. "Your father has been different since your visit. Distant. Questioning everything. Is that what you wanted? To turn him against me after 40 years of marriage?" For the first time, I saw something new in her expression. Fear. Not of public opinion, but of losing control. Of losing my father. "I don't want to turn anyone against you. I just won't pretend anymore. For your sake, for mine, or for appearances. So what do you want? Melissa? What will it take to put this ugliness behind us?" I looked through the terrace doors at Sophia, laughing with her cousins. At my father, watching them with genuine joy. At Rebecca, who despite her flaws was trying to bridge our family's divides. "Acknowledgement," I said finally. "Not just privately, but within our family and your social circle. Acknowledgement that you and Dad made a cruel choice, that you valued appearances over your daughter and granddaughter. That's the starting point. And then, if I humiliate myself like that, then we start building something new. Not the old relationship where I constantly sought approval I never received. Something honest, something that makes space for who I actually am, not who you wished I was." She stared at me for a long moment. "You've changed." "Yes," I agreed. "That's what happens when you stop trying to please people who can't be pleased." Inside, the band began playing for Rebecca's first dance. My mother looked torn between continuing our conversation and maintaining appearances by being present for the moment. "Go," I said gently. "It's Rebecca's night." As she walked away, back straight, smile firmly in place, I wondered if anything I'd said had penetrated decades of carefully constructed facades. I doubted it. But for the first time, I realized it didn't matter. I no longer needed her to change to be whole myself. The morning after Rebecca's gala, I took Sophia to the Boston Children's Museum, a deliberate choice to create a positive memory in a city that held so much pain for me. Watching her explore exhibits with unbridled enthusiasm, I marveled at her resilience, her openness to joy despite the complicated family dynamics swirling around her. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Breakfast tomorrow before your flight? Just the three of us." I replied with a simple, "yes," then pocketed my phone and focused on Sophia's adventure through the museum's bubble room. The next morning, we met my father at a quiet cafe near our hotel. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes suggesting a sleepless night. "Everything okay, Dad?" I asked after we ordered. He managed a smile for Sophia, who was coloring the children's menu, before responding quietly. "Your mother and I had a long conversation after the gala. Several conversations, actually." Something in his tone made me sit up straighter. "About?" "Everything. The past. How we treated you. What happens next." He hesitated. "I told her I wasn't willing to pretend anymore either. That if she wanted to salvage any relationship with you and Sophia, she needed to face reality." "How did that go?" He gave a humorless laugh. "About as well as you'd expect. She accused me of betraying her, said I was rewriting history to assuage my guilt." Sophia looked up at the tension in his voice. I quickly suggested she explore the cafe's small bookshelf in the corner, within sight, but out of earshot. "I'm sorry," I said once she was browsing books. "I never intended to come between you and Mom." "You didn't," he replied firmly. "Decades of avoidance and performance did that. Your return just forced us to face what we've been ignoring." Our food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. When Sophia returned to the table, the discussion shifted to lighter topics. Her school in San Francisco, my father's retirement plans, places in Boston we might visit on our next trip. As we were preparing to leave, my father handed me an envelope. "Don't open this now," he said. "Wait until you're home." The flight back to San Francisco was smooth, Sophia sleeping most of the way after our busy weekend. Back home, after putting her to bed, I finally opened my father's envelope. Inside was a check for $1 million and a letter. "Melissa," it began, "this isn't atonement. No amount could serve that purpose. It's not an investment in birthright. Your company's success is entirely your own achievement. This represents what would have been yours had we supported you from the beginning. Education funds, the trust from your grandparents that we withheld, a decade of birthday and Christmas gifts never given. It's yours without conditions. Use it, return it, donate it. Whatever you choose will be right. I'm making changes in my life that I should have made years ago. Your mother and I are entering counseling. I've stepped down from hospital boards to focus on what truly matters. I've consulted an attorney about ensuring Sophia's place in our will, regardless of what happens between your mother and me. You asked for acknowledgement. I'm starting with this letter, but there will be more. The truth deserves to be spoken, however uncomfortable. With admiration and love that I should have expressed long ago, Dad. I sat with the letter for a long time, emotions washing over me in waves. The check represented a fortune to most people, but its monetary value wasn't what moved me. It was the concrete acknowledgement of wrong, the tangible evidence of change. The next morning, I called him. I got your letter, I said when he answered. And? I don't need the money, Dad. I know you don't, he replied. That's partly why I want you to have it. I thought about what the money could mean, not to me, but to others. I'd like to use it to expand Birthright's scholarship program for single mothers, create the Anderson Family Scholarship. Silence, then a slightly choked response. I'd be honored. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected email from my mother. No greeting, no pleasantries, just 3 sentences. Your father says I owe you acknowledgement. I should have never given you that ultimatum 7 years ago. I've lived with the consequences of that mistake every day since. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't warm or emotional. But from a woman who had never admitted error in her life, it was seismic. I showed the email to Claire during our Sunday video call. Well, she said after reading it, the Ice Queen has acknowledged that she bleeds. It's a start. Should I respond? What do you want to say? I considered the question carefully. That I appreciate her email. That we have a long way to go. That Sophia deserves better than a grandmother who sees her as evidence of a mistake. Then say that, Claire advised. Directly. Without anger, but without sugarcoating. I did, sending a reply that was equally straightforward. Thank you for acknowledging what happened. I hope this is the beginning of honest communication between us. Sophia and I are open to building a new relationship, but only one based on respect and acceptance. The response came several days later, longer this time, less defensive. She wrote about attending her first therapy session with my father, about reconsidering priorities as they entered their later years, about wanting to know Sophia better. It was stilted, formal, clearly difficult for her to write, but it was genuine. Over the following months, a cautious correspondence developed. I didn't share the intimate details of our lives, but I sent photos of Sophia's science fair project, updates on Birthright's expansion, news of Claire's bookstore opening a 3rd location. My mother responded with equally measured communications, news of Rebecca's children, updates on community changes, hesitant questions about our lives in San Francisco. 6 months after Rebecca's gala, I received another unexpected communication, this time, a formal letter from my parents' church. The pastor wrote that Catherine Anderson had resigned from her position as chair of the women's ministry after 15 years of service. She had, he wrote, expressed a desire to focus on family reconciliation and personal growth. I stared at the letter in disbelief. Nothing, not even my success, not even the Boston Globe article, had shocked me as much as my mother voluntarily relinquishing her position of social power. That evening, she called directly for the first time. You received Pastor Michael's letter? She asked without preamble. Yes, I was surprised. A long pause. It was time for a change. Coming from my mother, this simple statement was revolutionary. Are you okay? I asked, genuinely concerned. Another pause. I'm adjusting. Your father has been supportive. The conversation remained awkward, 2 people feeling their way through unfamiliar emotional territory. But as we said goodbye, my mother said something that left me speechless. I've been reading about your app, what you've built. It's remarkable. Melissa. From the woman who had once dismissed my tech career as playing with computers, this represented a fundamental shift. That night, I sat on my balcony overlooking San Francisco Bay, reflecting on the unexpected turns life can take. 10 years ago, I'd been thrown out of my family home, pregnant and alone. Today, I ran a company valued at nearly $100 million, raised a brilliant daughter, and was witnessing what had seemed impossible. My parents changing, growing, acknowledging their mistakes. The road ahead would still have bumps. My mother would never be warm and demonstrative. My father would always carry guilt. But something new was emerging from the ashes of our broken family. Something authentic, if imperfect. The next morning, I called a family meeting with Sophia and Claire. How would you feel about spending Christmas in Boston this year? I asked Sophia. Her eyes widened. With Grandpa and Grandma and Aunt Rebecca? Yes. All of them. She thought for a moment, serious as always when making important decisions. Will Grandma be nice to you? She's trying to be, I answered honestly. People can change, but it takes time. Sophia nodded sagely. We should give her a chance then. Everyone deserves a second chance. I looked at Claire, who shrugged with a smile. When did she get so wise? She has good examples, I replied, hugging them both. That evening I emailed my parents accepting their Christmas invitation, with one condition: Claire would be joining us. My chosen family and my birth family, finally converging. The response came within hours, a simple, "We look forward to welcoming all of you." No drama, no conditions, just acceptance. The journey wasn't over, but a new chapter had definitely begun. Ms. Anderson, they're ready for you. I smoothed my blazer and followed the assistant into the conference room where the hospital board waited. This wasn't just any hospital. It was Boston Memorial, where my father had spent his surgical career. 6 months after our Christmas visit, which had gone surprisingly well, with only minor tensions, I found myself back in Boston for a different purpose. Birthright had launched a new initiative, partnering with major hospitals to provide our premium services free to all expectant mothers, regardless of income or insurance status. Boston Memorial was our East Coast flagship partner. My father, now fully retired, had helped arrange the meeting, but wasn't present. This was my moment alone. "Good morning," I began, addressing the room of distinguished medical professionals. "Thank you for considering this partnership with Birthright." As I launched into my presentation, statistics on maternal health outcomes, testimonials from existing hospital partners, financial projections, I felt a surreal sense of coming full circle. Here I was, in my father's professional domain, being taken seriously not as Dr. Anderson's daughter, but as a successful CEO in my own right. The hospital's chief of obstetrics, Dr. Eleanor Chen, leaned forward. "Your focus on accessibility for single mothers and low-income families is particularly impressive, Ms. Anderson. What inspired that aspect of Birthright?" I paused, considering how personal to get. In business settings, I usually kept my origin story professional, focusing on market gaps rather than personal experience. But something about being in Boston, in this hospital where my father had worked, made me choose transparency. "I was a single mother myself," I replied. "When I was 24 and pregnant, I discovered that most pregnancy resources assumed a traditional support system, a partner, family help, financial stability. I had none of those things. I didn't mention being disowned, didn't need to. The business case was strong enough without personal drama. Birthright was born from that gap in the market. We've now helped over 6 million women navigate pregnancy and early parenthood, many of them in situations similar to mine." Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "Well, your personal experience has translated into an exceptional resource. I think I speak for the board when I say we're excited about this partnership." After the meeting concluded successfully, I checked my phone to find several missed calls from my mother. Unusual, since our communication typically remained limited to scheduled calls and brief texts. "Mom, is everything okay?" I asked when she answered my call back. "Yes, fine," she replied, her voice tense. I heard you were presenting at Memorial today." "Ah, of course news would travel in their social circles." "Yes, we're launching a partnership program. It went well." A pause. "I wondered if you might have time for lunch while you're in town." This was unprecedented. My mother initiating an unplanned one-on-one meeting. "I have a flight at 4, I said carefully, "but I could do a quick lunch." We agreed to meet at a small cafe near the hospital. When I arrived, my mother was already seated, perfectly groomed as always, but somewhat subdued. "How was your presentation?" she asked after we ordered. "Successful. They're on board with the partnership." She nodded, fidgeting with her napkin, a nervous gesture I'd rarely seen from her. "Your father would be proud." "Is proud, I mean." "He helped arrange the meeting," I acknowledged. An uncomfortable silence fell between us. My mother broke it unexpectedly. "I drove past your old startup office yesterday. The building's been renovated. It's a tech incubator now." I raised an eyebrow, surprised she even knew where my old office had been. "I've been learning about your journey," she explained, seeing my expression. "The places in Boston that were part of your life before, the apartment you had when everything happened." "Why?" I asked simply. She stared into her coffee cup. "Your father and I have been doing this exercise in therapy, retracing steps, understanding impacts. He suggested I try to imagine your life then, what it was like for you. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I saw my mother vulnerable, uncertain. It was hard," I said finally. "Being alone, being pregnant, starting over, but it made me stronger." "Yes," she agreed quietly. Clearly it did. Our food arrived, creating a natural pause. As we ate, my mother surprised me again. "The hospital board chairman's wife is in my garden club, Martha Stevens. She told me about your presentation. Said you were, and I quote, brilliant and commanding. I waited for the qualifier, the subtle diminishment that usually followed any praise from my mother. Instead, she added, I wasn't surprised to hear that. I nearly dropped my fork. You weren't? A faint smile touched her lips. Melissa, whatever our difficulties, I've never doubted your intelligence, your determination. Even when I disapproved of your choices, I recognized your capabilities. You never told me that. No, she agreed. I was too focused on what I thought you should be doing with those capabilities. We ate in silence for a few moments before she spoke again. I saw Sophia's science project video you sent. The solar system model with the motorized planets. Did she build that herself? Most of it. I helped with some of the wiring. She reminds me of you at that age. Always building things, always questioning how things work. Another pause. I should have encouraged that more. This was the closest my mother had ever come to expressing regret about my childhood, not just about throwing me out when I was pregnant. It's not too late to encourage Sophia, I offered. She looked up, surprise and something like hope in her expression. No, I suppose it isn't. As lunch concluded and we prepared to part ways, my mother reached into her purse and withdrew a small wrapped package. For Sophia, she explained. It's a book about women in science. I thought she might like it. I accepted the gift, touched by the thoughtfulness. It showed she was paying attention to who Sophia actually was, not who she might want her to be. Thank you. She'll love it. We walked together to the street where my Uber waited. Awkwardly, my mother leaned in for a brief hug, our first physical contact beyond formal air kisses in years. Safe travels, she said, stepping back quickly. Mom? I called as she turned to leave. Would you and Dad like to come to San Francisco next month for Sophia's science fair? She'd like you to be there. The invitation surprised us both. But Sophia had indeed asked if her grandparents could attend, and I'd promised to consider it. My mother's composure slipped momentarily, genuine emotion breaking through. We'd like that very much. As my Uber pulled away, I reflected on how much had changed in a year. The woman who had once given me 24 hours to leave her house was now making tentative efforts to understand my life, to connect with my daughter on Sophia's terms, not hers. Change didn't erase the past. The pain of rejection, the years of absence, these weren't negated by recent improvements, but perhaps they could be balanced by something new, something honest. That evening on the flight home, I drafted an email to my leadership team outlining the hospital partnership's next steps. As I worked, a notification appeared, an email from my mother with the subject line, "Thank you." The message was brief. I appreciated our lunch today. I've purchased the books for your guest room in preparation for our visit next month. Looking forward to seeing Sophia's science project in person. Attached was a receipt from a Boston bookstore, children's books about coding, space exploration, and women scientists. Books selected for who Sophia actually was, not who my mother might wish her to be. It was a small thing, but in the context of our relationship, it felt monumental. I thought about calling Claire to discuss these developments, but decided to wait until I was home. Some emotions were too complex to process at 30,000 feet. Instead, I opened my laptop's photo folder and found a recent picture of Sophia in our backyard, proudly displaying her science project. I set it as my desktop background, a reminder of what truly mattered. Not the past hurts, not the company valuation, but the bright-eyed child who had changed everything. The flight attendant stopped by my seat. Heading home? She asked, noticing the photo. Yes, I replied with a smile. Home to my daughter. The word home felt right in a way it never had in Boston. Home wasn't a place anymore. It was wherever Sophia was, wherever we built our life together. Whatever happened with my parents, with birthright, with any other aspect of my life, that core truth remained unchanged. I closed my laptop and gazed out the window at the sunset, painting the clouds in gold and pink. There was something poetic about flying west, toward home, leaving the East Coast and its complicated history behind. Not forever, but with healthy distance. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Miss you, Mommy. Claire and I made pasta from scratch. When are you coming home? I smiled and typed back, on my way right now. Save me some pasta. Love you more than all the stars. Her reply came instantly. Love you more than all the stars and planets combined. Our little ritual started years ago when she first became fascinated with astronomy. No matter what happened with my parents, with birthright, with any other aspect of my life, this bond, this pure, unconditional love, was the foundation everything else was built upon. As the plane began its descent into San Francisco, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey wasn't over. Family healing rarely happens in neat cinematic moments of reconciliation. It's messy, incremental, often frustrating. But for the first time, I believed we were all moving in the right direction. Mom, they're here! Sophia's excited voice echoed through our San Francisco home as the doorbell rang. I smoothed my dress and took a deep breath, centering myself before walking to the front door. It had been 3 years since that first tense lunch in Boston, 3 years of careful rebuilding, of boundaries tested and respected, of relationships gradually transformed. Today marked a significant milestone. My parents were visiting for Sophia's 12th birthday celebration, not just for a brief appearance, but for a full week's stay in our guest room. I opened the door to find them standing side by side, my father carrying 2 suitcases, my mother holding an elegantly wrapped gift. They looked older, but somehow lighter than in years past, as if they'd set down burdens they'd carried for decades. "Welcome to San Francisco," I said, stepping aside to let them enter. "How was your flight?" "Uneventful?" "Thankfully," my father replied, setting down the luggage to embrace me briefly. My mother handed Sophia her gift before offering me a slightly awkward hug. "The house is lovely, Melissa. Those bay windows get wonderful light." No backhanded compliment, no veiled criticism, just a straightforward observation. Progress, indeed. Sophia bounced on her toes, barely containing her excitement. "Can I show them my room now? And my coding projects? And the office?" I laughed. "Let them settle in first, sweetheart. They've had a long journey." "Actually," my father interjected, "I'd love to see what you've been working on." "Sophia, just give me 5 minutes to freshen up." As my parents disappeared into the guest room, I squeezed Sophia's shoulder. "They brought you quite a large present." She shrugged. "The best present is that they came for a whole week this time." Her simple statement warmed my heart. Despite our complicated family history, Sophia had developed a genuine relationship with her grandparents over the past few years, different from the one they had with Rebecca's children, more tentative perhaps, but authentic in its own way. The week unfolded with surprising ease. My father, fully embracing retirement, spent hours with Sophia building a complex robotics kit they'd selected together. My mother, while still more reserved, made genuine efforts to connect, asking Sophia thoughtful questions about her interests, helping her plan the menu for her birthday party, even sitting through a marathon viewing of Sophia's favorite science fiction series without a single disparaging comment. On the third day, while Sophia was at school and my father was meeting an old colleague for lunch, my mother asked to see my office. "The Birthright headquarters," she clarified, "if that's permitted." "Of course," I replied, surprised by her interest. "We can go this afternoon." The 30-story glass building that housed Birthright's operations reflected the company's success. Modern, innovative, with spectacular views of the bay. As we rode the elevator to the executive floor, I watched my mother taking it all in, her expression unreadable. "This is quite different from your old startup office," she finally commented. "Very different," I agreed. "We have over 300 employees now, offices in 6 countries." The elevator doors opened to reveal our reception area, where Ariana, my assistant, greeted us warmly. "Ms. Anderson, your 3 o'clock call to reschedule, and the product team needs 15 minutes on your calendar to discuss the new language translation feature." "Thank you." "Ariana, this is my mother, Catherine Anderson." If Ariana was surprised to meet the woman who had once disowned me, she didn't show it. "Wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Anderson. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea? Water would be lovely, thank you." As I led my mother through the office, introducing her to key team members and explaining various departments, I was struck by how surreal the moment felt. For years, these 2 parts of my life, family and birthright, had existed in separate universes. Now they were colliding in unexpected ways. In the large conference room, a wall displayed framed press coverage of Birthright's journey, including the Boston Globe article that had announced my success to my parents 3 years ago. My mother paused before it, reading the headline, "From Outcast to Revolutionary: How Melissa Anderson Transformed Personal Trauma into a $75 million Tech Empire." "You kept it," she observed quietly. "It was a turning point," I replied. "For the company. For me. For us." She nodded, moving along to examine other items in the room. Awards, recognitions, photos of Birthright-sponsored events. She stopped at a large photograph of me holding a newborn, surrounded by hospital staff. "Our 1,000th birth," I explained. "Baby Zoe in Chicago. Her mother used Birthright throughout her pregnancy." "And this?" She pointed to a framed certificate. "The Anderson Family Scholarship Program. We've helped over 300 single mothers complete their education while raising children." She touched the frame lightly. "Our name." "Yes. Thank you for that," she said simply, "for including us in something so important." We continued the tour, ending in my corner office with its panoramic view of the Golden Gate Bridge. My mother sat in one of the visitor chairs, looking not at the view, but at the collection of photos on my desk. Sophia at various ages, Claire at the opening of her newest bookstore, our small family at holidays and celebrations. "You've built something remarkable here, Melissa," she said finally. "Not just the company, your life. Thank you. I keep thinking about what might have been different," she continued, her voice taking on an unusual vulnerability. "If we had supported you when you told us you were pregnant, if we had welcomed Sophia from the beginning. We can't change the past." "Mom, no." She met my eyes directly. "But I want you to know that I recognize what was lost, what I threw away. 10 years with my granddaughter. 10 years of your achievements." I sat across from her, letting her words sink in. This was the most direct acknowledgement she had ever offered about the damage her actions had caused. "I appreciate that," I said finally. "Your father adapted more easily than I did," she admitted. "He connected with Sophia immediately. With you, it's been harder for me, I know. I was raised to believe there was only one right way to live, one acceptable path. When you deviated from that," she trailed off, gathering her thoughts. "I thought I was protecting our family's reputation. Now I realize I was just protecting my own rigid worldview." The woman sitting before me seemed almost like a stranger, vulnerable, reflective, honest in a way my mother had never been. "What changed?" I asked. "After all these years?" She considered the question carefully. "Seeing your success was part of it, the article. But mostly," she paused, "mostly it was the realization that I'd lost you, that your father was pulling away too, that my perfect life was empty without genuine connection." She smoothed her skirt, a gesture I recognized from childhood, something she did when emotions threatened to overwhelm her carefully maintained composure. "I'm not good at this, Melissa. Admitting mistakes, showing feelings, but I'm trying to learn. For Sophia, for you, for myself." I reached across the desk and took her hand, a gesture that would have been unimaginable a few years earlier. "That's all any of us can do. Try to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday." That evening, as we celebrated Sophia's birthday with a small dinner party, Claire, my parents, a few of Sophia's close friends and their parents, I watched my mother help Sophia arrange candles on her cake, their heads bent together in concentration. My father caught my eye from across the room and smiled, a silent acknowledgement of how far we had all come. Later, after guests had departed and Sophia had gone to bed surrounded by new books and science kits, I joined my parents on the back deck. The San Francisco night was cool, but not cold, the sky clear enough to see a few stubborn stars fighting through the city's light pollution. "She's extraordinary," my father said, gazing toward Sophia's darkened bedroom window. "Reminds me of you at that age. The curiosity, the determination. She has advantages I didn't," I replied, then immediately regretted the edge in my voice. But my father nodded. "Yes, a mother who supports her unconditionally, who celebrates her exactly as she is." We sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the distant sounds of the city. "Birthright is opening a research center," I said eventually, "focused on improving maternal health outcomes for underserved communities. We're breaking ground next month." "That's wonderful," my mother said. "Where will it be located?" "Boston, actually. We're partnering with several hospitals there, including Memorial." My father looked surprised. "You never mentioned this." "It's been in development for a while. We wanted everything finalized before making announcements." "Will you be spending more time in Boston then?" my mother asked, trying to sound casual. "Some. Sophia and I will still be based here, but we'll visit more frequently." I hesitated before adding, "She might enjoy spending some of her school breaks with you, if that's something you'd be interested in." The offer hung in the air between us. Not just increased visits, but a suggestion of greater integration of our lives after years of careful separation. "We'd like that very much," my father answered for both of them. "Very much indeed." 10 years ago, I sat in my car outside my parents' house, a positive pregnancy test in my purse, their ultimatum ringing in my ears. I drove away that night believing I had lost everything. Instead, I had found myself, found my strength, my purpose, my voice, created a company that helped millions of women, raised a daughter who knew her worth couldn't be measured by others' approval. And now, in life's strange and winding way, I had found a new relationship with my parents. Not perfect, not without complications, but authentic in a way our old relationship never was. As we sat together under the San Francisco stars, I thought about the many women who had shared their stories with me over the years. Women who used Birthright during their own difficult pregnancies. Women who found themselves alone and scared as I once had been. I had built Birthright to be the support system I'd needed but didn't have. In doing so, I'd created something larger than myself, larger than my personal story of rejection and redemption. "What are you thinking about?" my father asked, noticing my distant expression. "The power of starting over," I replied. "Of building something new from nothing." My mother reached over and squeezed my hand briefly, a small gesture from a woman who had rarely shown physical affection, but meaningful in its spontaneity. "You've taught us about that," she said quietly, "about beginning again when it seems impossible." As the night deepened around us, I felt a sense of completion, not because everything was perfect or because all wounds were healed, but because I had finally stopped defining myself by what I had lost. Instead, I celebrated what I had built: a successful company, a loving home for my daughter, and yes, even this new, honest relationship with my parents. I am Melissa Anderson. I was once kicked out for being pregnant. I left without saying a word. And 10 years later, I returned not seeking approval or validation, but offering the opportunity for a new beginning, on my terms, with my boundaries, from a position of strength rather than need. That, perhaps, is the most powerful revenge of all, living so fully in your own truth that the rejection of others loses its power to define you. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe. And remember that your story doesn't end at the hardest chapter. Sometimes that's exactly where the most important part begins.